Just weeks ago, we tested the 2017 Mercedes CLA. Now I'm back with another blue Benz, the 2017 C-Class. I'm Clifford Attia with CarGurus, and next to me is bread and butter. That's what the C-Class means for Mercedes-Benz. It's the practical, sort of affordable luxury sedan that sells in big numbers across the world. And it's so popular here, Mercedes builds this car down in Alabama. Redesigned for 2015, the C-Class offers the style and technology that was once reserved for the S-Class. So if you've got $400 or $500 a month to burn, join us. We're going for a drive. New for 2017 in the C-Class is a two-door coupe and a two-door cabriolet. There's also a new AMG C43 model with a twin-turbo 6. And we're in none of those cars. We're in the C300, which is the standard base model, and it's the trim that you're most likely to find at a Mercedes dealer. The new C-Class was introduced in 2014, and it copied the style of the big S-Class, and that's no bad thing. And what you're seeing now is taking Mercedes' design from that rectilinear, blocky look to a more curvaceous style, and that's going to be across their entire lineup. Now, depending on how you're feeling, you can either outfit a C-Class with the luxury package. Now, that can put a traditional hood ornament on the front, just like the old Mercedes-Benzes. It puts a more comfort-tuned suspension, smaller wheels and tires, and lets you have wood on the steering wheel if you like that. But Mercedes is really pushing the sport package, like the one we're driving. Now that has a flat-bottom steering wheel, it has a stiffer suspension, bigger wheels, bigger brakes. Even the interior is different. It's all this black headliner. They're trying to be more like BMW these days, rather than the way they used to be. Also new for 2017, a backup camera is standard. How very generous of Mercedes. Plus, things like blind spot alert and heated seats are now standalone options, so you don't have to spend thousands of dollars just to get one feature you like. So as true to Mercedes-Benz, in the C-Class you find a lot of features that you probably don't even realize exist. And that's because Mercedes pays their engineers to develop all sorts of technologies that you never noticed, just because. Example? An auto air recirculation within the climate control system that's linked to the GPS. It knows if you're entering a tunnel, so it switches the recirculation on. As soon as you leave, turns it back off for fresh air. There's also a perfume canister in the glove box. That's part of our car's Premium 4 package, and that sprays cologne through the air vents. Again, you could shower and do other things to keep your car clean other than doing that. But again, it's just because. Now the Burmester stereo in this car actually has its bass speakers mounted in the front rather than the rear. And Mercedes says the resonance in the front actually works better. It actually plays off some of the car's cross members and other structural supports, so you get a better sound without having to have all the bass in the back. Now when Mercedes isn't engineering crazy stuff like perfume canisters, it actually does a heck of a lot with safety. One of those is crosswind assist. Now the car will sense whether wind is pushing the car from side to side in the lane, and it will automatically apply the brakes on either side to keep you straighter. This car will actually detect if someone's about to hit you, and if you can't avoid an accident, it'll actually flash the tail lamps, lock all the brakes, and even position your seat so you're best prepared for that collision. Now those brakes may look nice and they perform really well, but they actually will also dry themselves automatically in the rain. Plus, they'll put the binders, the pads, much closer to the disc if you all of a sudden lift off the throttle. Now that's an anticipation that you're about to brake really hard. It's really smart thinking. So the infotainment system, that's what Mercedes calls command, has gotten a little more complex on this car. And that's because there's a new touchpad that's mounted right over the central knob. But it does accept handwriting recognition in all sorts of languages. And after a while, it does get easy. Now, it's taken me several Mercedes cars that I've driven to actually find this system useful before it got to be a bit inundating with all of the new inputs and swipe gestures that you can use. But once you get familiar with it, it actually is well laid out and pretty logical. Now, other cars like the Audi A4, for example, will put an entire digital instrument panel, so there's nothing analog whatsoever. The C-Class, even though it has a lot of technology, isn't quite up to that level. And I don't really mind that. It's got a nice big driver information display right here in the center. It's easy to use off the steering wheel. And the analog gauges, the tachometer and speedometer, are just nice looking. You don't really need to have a full digital dash to get most of that. But if you want more technology, Audi's probably going to be your bet. Now, unlike the CLA, that was a much smaller car than this. The C-Class actually has room for 4 adults. Went on a recent Thanksgiving trip down to Greenwich to see my family, and no one was really complaining in the back. The leg cutouts in those back seats give rear passengers a lot more room, and there's good headroom and general space. Not as big as an E-Class, that's more comfortable for sure, but for a compact sedan, this is pretty good. There's 12.6 cubic feet of space in the trunk, and the rear seats also fold down. It's a little bit less space than the CLA, and like that car, there's no spare tire. While there's plenty of storage bins inside the C-Class, the perfume canister in our car takes up a good chunk of the space inside the glove box. So if you have a family, you're really going to want a larger car like the E-Class. But if you just have one child or you're single and just have a few friends along for the ride, the C-Class fits the bill. Under the hood, we have a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. There's 241 horsepower and 273 foot-pounds of torque. That's all mated through a 7-speed automatic transmission. Rear-wheel drive is standard, and 4MATIC, as our car, is optional for $2,000, and that's all-wheel drive. The EPA estimates the C300 at 24 miles per gallon in the city and 34 on the highway. If you get the 4MATIC, which is all-wheel drive, that drops highway miles down to about 31 miles per gallon. The new E-Class has a 9-speed automatic, while the C-Class we're driving makes do with the 7-speed automatic. It's pretty smooth in most cases, and it's better than the CLA, but occasionally you can still feel shifts, which is unlike some other Mercedes cars I've driven. The Mercedes lets you stuff a turbo V6 or a turbo V8 under the hood of a C-Class, but the C300 has really all the power you need. And when you're cycling through the dynamic select options, now that alters the throttle and the transmission and the steering response, you can make the most of that Turbo 4. Now while the C300 is technically a sports sedan, so you feel more of the road coming through your fingertips and your ears, it's actually pretty well isolated inside. It's quiet. It's a lot quieter than the CLA, which didn't have a lot of the dampening inside, and it felt louder at all speeds. The steering on the C-Class is very light and direct, and you can vary how much weight the steering has with the dynamic select option here. So you can go from really light on the highway to a little firmer when you're going around corners, and that type of option is really nice. The C-Class starts under $40,000. Our car is just under $60,000 because we've got about every option you can order on it. Now that's comparable to a BMW 3 Series or an Audi A4 because in the compact luxury segment, you really can't get a car for under $30,000 anymore. That doesn't exist. This car is hard to fault. The C-Class can coddle all your passengers, yet at the touch of a button, you can rage all over the road like a BMW driver. It's that much fun. There's power, space, comfort, plenty of style, and a lot of prestige behind that big star. But there's also a lot of competition in this segment, like the BMW 3 Series and the 2017 Audi A4, which is brand new. For more details on the C300 and its rivals, check out our reviews on CarGurus.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.